The JMF Advisors Show is a podcast for business owners, C-suite executives, and entrepreneurs who are looking to build, grow, or even exit a business.
We bring in some of our best financial advisors to interview experts on business best practices, hot topics, and sprinkle in some tax and accounting help.
If you're a business owner, startup founder, CFO, or just starting your side hustle, this podcast is for you.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the JMF Advisors Show. I'm Jennifer Stripling. I'm a tax manager at JamisonMoneyFarmer. I'm joined here by Lauren Roberts. She's also a tax manager at JMF. We are going to talk a little bit today about the IRS Form 1099. These forms themselves are relatively simple, but they can be tricky to determine if you needed to complete the form and who you might need to complete the form for. We're going to discuss the rules about issuing 1099s and the different types of 1099s that you may need to complete. So Lauren, talk to us a little bit about what the different types of 1099s are and maybe some of the 1099s that you think are important for us to touch on today.
So there are a lot of different 1099s, but I think when we're talking about businesses and what you need to be aware of, I think we should just kind of stick to the 1099 NEC, 1099 miscellaneous, and the 1099K.
Okay, yes, those are definitely the three most common forms that we see and would most likely be the three forms that businesses would need to watch out for and watch out for the need to complete those. So how about we talk about what are 1099s used for?
1099s are used for, so as a business, if you're paying someone, so let's talk about 1099 NEC and 1099 miscellaneous. Those are the ones you'll likely most have to issue if you're a trade or business. Now, if you're an individual, you don't have to issue these forms. So you would issue those, like a 1099 is to, NEC is for non-employee compensation. And those are payments to independent contractors or anybody you hire to do services in your business. So that doesn't have to necessarily be an independent contractor. It could be a repairman you pay, somebody you pay to build your website, that sort of thing.
Okay, so we're looking at people that are not employees of the business. So it's
Correct.
Not somebody that would receive a W-2 from my business.
Correct.
Okay. Mm-hmm. How do you know when to issue a 1099?
So the threshold is $600 or more. So it's not a high threshold at all. So once you hit that $600 mark, you have an obligation to issue a 1099 NEC or 1099 miscellaneous. And I touched on the NEC, but the miscellaneous, there are many reasons to issue a miscellaneous. Some are really odd, like boat proceeds, fishing. But the main thing on that one we issue is for rent. So if you rent your office space or you rent somewhere to store, a storage unit, you would need to issue them a 1099 miscellaneous for rent once you hit that $600 mark.
Okay. And when are these returns 1099 forms? When are those filed? When's the due date for those?
January 31st, and they're supposed to be in the recipient's hands January 31st as well.
Okay, so they actually need to go out maybe a little bit before the end of January?
Yes, or get them in the mail on that date for sure.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about how do I determine or where do I get the information that's needed to complete the 1099 form?
The best thing to do is also you don't have to, if you paid this person by a credit card, they're going to get a 1099K because you've paid through a third party payment method. So they're going to include that on a 1099K. So you don't have to include that payment if you paid that person via credit card. You would really just take probably your bank account and, you would, if you have QuickBooks, you drill into that and you sort by the vendor and then you see if you paid them more than $600 and that's a good way to start.
Okay. Maybe go through some examples of when you would issue a 1099.
Really, 1099 NEC, so non-employment compensation, anybody you pay for services, so any non-employee that you pay for a service. So that can be cleaning or something more professional like website design or graphic design or something like that.
Okay. And then I know there's some new rules that have been issued for 2022 related to third-party payment networks like Venmo and PayPal. Maybe you could touch a little bit about their new rules and what they're going to be looking for to issue 1099s.
Yes, so third-party payment networks issue you a 1099-K. So they've collected payments on your behalf as a third party, from your customer, and they issue it to you. And that threshold used to be 200 transactions or $20,000, which is a high threshold. And new for 22, that threshold drops all the way back down to the 1099 NEC and miscellaneous threshold of only $600.
Okay, so it's going to be a lot easier, I guess, to hit that threshold for 2022.
Yes, and you'll want to look at those if you accept payment through Venmo or PayPal. Look at those FAQs because, I may have sent you a Venmo because we split dinner or something like that. Mm-hmm. Those aren't what's going to be targeted payments on a 1099-K. It's really if you're set up as a business through these third-party network, or if you are tagged as a payment. I don't know if you've noticed when you Venmo someone, there's a little slide button. You can say protect this transaction, and that's going to tag that payment as a payment to a business, and that will be triggered for the 1099-K.
Okay, that's good to know. That wasn't something that I had noticed in the past.
You don't have to worry about it.
Are there any other tips or facts about 1099s that you'd like to touch on today?
Yes. So if you're a business and you're required to issue these 1099s, you have to have, the business name, as the IRS has it on file, their address, and their EIN, or if they're, a sole proprietorship, their social security number. So the best way to get this information is called a W-9, and you give this to, your vendor, whoever's providing the service, and they fill it out, and that gives you the information. And one other important thing on the W-9, they check what type of entity they are. You don't have to issue 1099s to an incorporated business. It's just individuals and unincorporated business, unless you're a lawyer. Evidently, the IRS does not trust lawyers. If it's to a lawyer, a law firm, or anybody providing legal services, you still issue it to them if they're not an incorporated business.
Okay.
So if they check they're an S corporation or a corporation on the form, you still have to issue it. Now, an LLC is not a incorporated business. They're unincorporated, and they still need that 1099.
Okay, that's a good tip.
Yes.
So even though the S corp is a flow through like an LLC, you do have to issue the 1099.
Right.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay. Anything else?
Okay, I have one more tip on when you, as a business, if you're going to get a 1099, somebody asks for you to have the W-9 filled out, be sure to put your business name and EIN and not your individual name, because then they're going to be looking for that income to be reported on. If you give them your social security number, they're going to look for it on your 1040, whereas you're going to be putting it on your pass-through entity like your partnership return or your S-corp return. So that creates a matching issue with the IRS that could cause a notice. So make sure to put your business name and your EIN. But there is a catch. If you are a single member LLC or sole proprietorship, they actually, if it's going to go on your 1040, even though you may have a business set up in an EIN, but you're a single member LLC, they want your individual name and social security. So there's special rules, but those are kind of like, if you look at the 1099, it has some instructions right at the bottom, a half page, and it tells you how to fill out that form.
Okay.
Depending on what type of entity you are.
Okay. Thank you very much. Sure. We appreciate the tips today, and I guess if anybody has any further questions about 1099s, feel free to reach out to JMF. You can email us at info@jmf.com.
If you would like us to help your business or would like to suggest additional podcast topics, simply send an email to info@jmf.com.
And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on YouTube and your favorite audio podcast apps.